So we have here Monty Harper, singer-songwriter from Oklahoma, Mike Offutt, singer-songwriter from Illinois. Still there, right? You're retired, but still living.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
And Marc Gutman, singer-songwriter thespian, based in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. So they're going to introduce themselves. They'll take a few minutes each for that, and then we'll have a kind of a free-ranging discussion about STEM songwriting and how to do it well. So I think we'll go Marc, Mike, Monty, and please bear with us as we take turns sharing our screens and such. Although Marc's going low tech, so that should be easy. Go ahead, Marc.
Hello, my name is Leonard Euler, and I've written a poetry for you. I crossed 7 bridges to be here today, to bring you this important notation. Not functions or sigmas I fear, though my vision is fading, my voice is still clear. Not Euler, but Euler. Euler, I barely know how much I'd had it. I added reciprocals of all the factorials. Turned out it's the number of nature. Presenting now for all to see the main event named after me, it's E. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E, a constant transcendentally, it's E. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E, a constant transcendentally, 1 plus 1 over n, all in parentheses, 2, the power of n, taken to infinity, describes the growth of things compounded continuously, or half-life. The radiation decays exponentially. Edges plus 2, our faces plus the vertices off topic. I'm sorry, just came to me, apologies, the function, e to the x, aka the exp, its inverse, the log by c, or natural log, naturally it's e. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E with beautiful Taylor series, it's E. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E, a constant transcendentally, E to the ix is cosine x plus I sine x. It is imperative that you catch what happens next. You see x is measured in the radians and not degrees. Using my formula, it is plain for all to see that E2, the pi times I plus 1 makes the quantity of 0. Abstract I know, but still used to this very day when engineers transform the waves of phasors, not the kind that blaze just electricity. You see, it's E. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E, as seen on X, KCD, it's E. The number E, more than 2, less than 3, E. The number E, a constant transcendentally, 2.71828182 endlessly, infinitely, continuing, streaming, irrational, E. I'm on, right?
I'm sorry, we didn't get that. Could you do another take?
One more time.
Just do it one more time. So my name is Marc. I'm with the, I'm in a band called ICanHasMath, and I'm in a theater company called Matheatre. The two are very closely connected. We've been doing math and music and science together since like 2006. And just quickly, we've got, we wrote a show called Calculus the Musical that's been touring. It's in its 11th year now, which is very exciting. And we've just come out with a new play called Curie Me Away, which I did not write, but it's really good. It's a musical about the life and times of Marie Curie. That's what Matheatre is doing. And then ICanHasMath, since about 2008, we've released a number of CDs, hooray, and maybe we'll get into more details about any of that as we move along. But that I'm pretty happy with that intro. Are you guys happy with that intro?
I'm delighted.
Really good.
Thanks.
Okay, Mike.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let me start my show. And well, I just lost my screen. There we go. Share screen. I'm now sharing my screen. Can you see that my screen? Not till I started, I suppose.
We see it.
Yeah, I feel really bad for the folks who like me who are technically challenged at times, but okay, here, I'll get it started. Okay, so this is a song by Mendeleev, and please feel free to sing along. He was born in Russia in 1834. Hard work as a youth opened up the college doors. He always tried to be the best that he could be, and he chose to make his mark in chemistry. Who told the elements where to go? Mendeleev. Who put them in columns and in rows? Mendeleev. Who was ready, who was able to make a periodic table? Who was that chemist? Mendeleev. Well, he wondered if nature really had a master plan, if the elements had a pattern that one could understand. So he bought a bunch of cards and on each one wrote the name of an element and its weight. Then he played a game. He put them all in order by their atomic weights, used their chemical properties to differentiate. Groups began to form, and despite some question marks, he managed to produce a simple periodic chart. And who told the elements where to go? Mendeleev. Who put them in columns and in rows? Mendeleev. Who was ready, who was able to make a periodic table? Who was that chemist? Mendeleev. Few years passed. See, I can't see my lyrics now. A few years passed. Oh, at first in 18, whatever, the chart was not a hit. But that young Russian chemist was not the kind to quit. He revised atomic weights and he staked his whole career, predicting that several new elements would appear. A few years passed and sure enough they came. Gallium, scandium, germanium were their names. Chemists everywhere were impressed with what they saw. There really must be something to this periodic law. And who told the elements where to go? Mendeleev, yes. Who put them in columns and rows? Mendeleev, who was ready, who was able to make a periodic table? Who was that chemist? Mendeleev. So they call him the father of the periodic table. And his work gave rise to another kind of label. It's the name for element number 101. In honor of this man, they call it Mendeleev. And who told the elements where to go? Mendeleev. Who put them in columns and in rows? Mendeleev. Who was ready, who was able to make a periodic table? Who was this chemist? Mendeleev. Thank you so much, Marc, and everyone. So my name is Mike Offutt. I'll just tell you really quickly. And so I'm a retired teacher from Illinois. I taught chemistry and AP chemistry for 32 years, but I was a singer-songwriter, performer in college, and et cetera. And so I got involved in making some science songs by wanting to write a song that would be like the salt and pepper during my classroom lessons. I would want to start, a class with something like this, or I would end up with something like this. And then I would keep testing the songs until the students sort of responded to them. So that kept me, you get affirmation as an artist, as a singer-songwriter, and that just like pouring gasoline on a fire. And so you end up it became exponential, and so I ended up with a lot of albums and things. And I also write the annual Mole Day song for the National Mole Day Foundation. So if you type in, the Mole song, you'll see that, and that's me. The other thing is that my songs have gotten out into the YouTube atmosphere, and sometimes people even ask permission, but they'll take my song, especially students like to write to make a YouTube video. And, a couple of my songs are over, some of them are over 500,000. It's not because I did the video or anything like that, but they just the music is easy to make a video to. So I love doing this, and I love listening to these two guys. I got to tell you, just the last thing, being sandwiched between Marc and Monty, that has significance later on when I get a chance to talk, because I want to talk about the interaction between musical theater and pop music, or music in the classroom, you know what I call it. So I'm done. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get the screen?
I want to end my sharing here.
Yeah, so Mike ends his sharing. Monty starts his sharing.
There we go. Sorry.
All right. Well, I'm just throwing my website up here so I can talk about myself for about 30 seconds, and then I'll play a video for you. So I I guess I do maybe 3 different things that have to do with writing science songs. I will write I started writing songs for kids like 25 years ago, and I started off just writing goofy, funny songs. So I have a lot of CDs out that are just general fun songs. A lot of them are about reading. Pause, Clause, Scales, and Tails is songs about reading. And then about 10 years ago, I started writing science songs, and my science Songs from the Science Frontier CD came out in 2010. Those songs are inspired, most of those are inspired by interviews I've done with scientists. So that really gets me going as a songwriter to find out what's interesting and difficult and amazing about what their research is, and then translate that into a song. And then the other thing I do is I write songs for clients. Let's see, Songwriter for Hire down here, Science Bard. You can click on that if you want to know more about getting me to write a song for you about any kind of topic. But I definitely enjoy it when I get to write a song for a client that is scientifically inclined. All right, and I'd like to, I'm going to switch my sharing over to a different screen and play this video. So this is where you mentioned pop music. This is, I kind of try to write pop-based songs for kids about science, but I think my audience includes adults as well. And this one is called Quarks and Electrons.
Smaller pieces than quarks and electrons. Everything we touch, everything we see is different combinations. brain. The brain is the organ that can reason and explain about quarks and electrons forming into atoms, evolving into DNA and complicated proteins. Proteins make neurons, and neurons make a brain. The brain is the organ that can reason and explain about quarks and electrons forming into atoms, evolving into DNA and complicated proteins. Proteins make neurons, and neurons make a brain. The brain is the organ that can reason and explain about quarks and electrons. Quarks and electrons. Quarks and electrons wrote this song.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see, how do I unshare? There it is. Stop. So,
Monty, do you have more to add to your self-intro, or does the song say it all?
the song says it all, I guess. Huh. Yeah, I talked before the song too. Oh, one other thing. There's a prize winner to announce, right? Greg, do you remember how many hours? I don't remember.
It was 4. 4 is the magic number.
4, okay. So some lucky person has won 4 hours of songwriting work from me. So I can write a song, I can help you write a song, I can just to give you feedback, help you get something recorded. But the winner of that is John Chase.
John Chase, so fellow songwriter, so it will be interesting to collaborate with him.
Yeah, maybe we can just do a collaboration, whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, so congrats to John, and we will move on. So we have lots of questions, but I guess once again, I'm gonna use my moderator's prerogative and just, Marc, I have to ask you, I'm astonished that you started with Euler, because that song, I don't know how intentional this was, but that my name is Leonard Euler and I have written a poetry for you, that sort of cacophony of I have written a poetry for you, it's super memorable, like it rings in my brain, but I have no idea what you were going for that with that. Is it just that English was not Euler's first language, or
that's definitely part of it, and the other part of that is to it's sometimes it's a slightly longer setup, but usually the point is to have a very quiet, reserved setup where you're kind of leading up to the expectation that this is going to be not a very exciting thing that's about to come. And then we immediately break that. But yeah, I think the wording of it has to do with him being having English not be his primary language.
Okay. Well, very, very memorable, at least for me.
I want to say something, Greg.
Yeah.
You know, that's what makes, Marc's song such a potentially powerful one in the classroom. That really caught your imagination. You wanted to ask questions, didn't you?
Yes, exactly.
And so, see, he starts this way. And again, it's this musical theater approach where you're thinking in terms of the song as a purpose. There's a character that is in a dramatic situation. So that happens in front of the classroom. Pop songs are great, and my songs are, but that can be very evocative, and really it's like a springboard type deal. So I really admire that. I'm looking to do more of that stuff, my thing. So I think that was cool.
Yeah, so maybe we can open this up as a general question. So you all, as expert songwriters, understand this need to hook the audience, and you have different tools and different ways of grabbing their attention. Maybe you could each talk a little about maybe your favorite sort of weird example of how you did something really unexpected in a song that was surprisingly effective in grabbing the audience? I mean, so for example, we generally know humor is good, catchy tunes are good, but maybe something beyond that where you did something really bizarre that worked.
I also want to compliment Monty on his song, because you're asking about a hook. So when he says quarks and electrons all the time, because that's different, isn't it? I mean, it used to be like one of the comments, protons and neutrons, right? I mean, or atoms. So now we have a different physics idea. See, so that is approaching, listening to that would approach an earworm to me. That I'm going to walk away with quarks and electrons walking out of the classroom. So that's another reason why both, Monty and Marc's stuff, I think, is really good in the classroom. I'm done. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mike.
I just building off of what Michael said, just that concept of the hook, with Monty's song, kind of reestablishing quarks and electrons as the center point. That's what you want to take away from that song. So that's what should be in the hook. For my song for math students, I've got more than 2, less than 3 in the hook. So students remember, like, oh yeah, it's pretty close to 3. It's more than 2. I'll at least remember that. And putting the most important nugget that you want someone to walk away with in the hook is going to solidify that. And something else that I've been thinking about a lot is the hook is also a lot of times your entry point for remembering the song. If you need to recall something, you want to make sure that that hook is going to take you into a useful part of the song.
Yeah, definitely. When I teach songwriting with kids, I'll talk about, and we usually use this as a starting point. I'll say, what's the focus and what's the angle? And I think of it like this: the focus is that one thing that your song is about, quarks and electrons, or the number E. And the angle is how you're going to present that information to the listener. There could be 1,000 different songs about quarks and electrons, but my particular angle was to do the meta thing and say, well, I'm made of quarks and electrons, so quarks and electrons wrote this song. And that gives me an angle and sort of a way to hang all the rest of the information onto that main idea. Marc's angle, he's talking about E, but he's talking about it from Euler's point of view. Like, that's really brilliant. So, and I think even more than the hook, the angle that you take on your song makes it unique and makes it interesting and makes people want to hear it. Again, because it's got an attitude, it's got a particular point of view, a particular approach to that topic.
And that's why, let me just jump in here too. So you see these guys, they're looking at writing songs through different models, and they also have, it's like they have a smorgasbord. They think, well, maybe I'll have a character sing this. Maybe this will just be a straightforward song about information. What's a dramatic thing, setting I could put this in? They do their research and they look for. They'll probably write down all sorts of words and phrases, and then they'll look at it and they'll get really, really comfortable with the material, and then this thing starts to emerge. What interests them most, and again, what do they want what do they want the person to take away? So it's really powerful to have all of this, to really have a broad range of approaching this, and so it's really cool to see these.
Right. And I spend a lot of time coming up with my angle for a song. It's just like you said, I do a lot of brainstorming and look at it, and I'll try out 3 or 4 different ideas before I hit on one that I think is really going to work the best. And then to answer Greg's question, what's the weirdest thing? I wrote a song from the point of view of a grain of sand. And that might be one of the strangest angles that I've taken on any of my songs. There's a process for, gosh, I don't know if I'm going to remember the details of this, but it's a process for figuring out how old something is. And you get the phosphorescence out of a grain of sand to see how long has it been in the dark. I'm not explaining it very well, but the grain of sand is saying, I've been here for a long time. The scientists are digging me up and they are paying attention to me because I can tell them how old this thing is. But I do that a lot. I have a song from the point of view of a microbe, bragging about his molecular eye. I have an eye made out of a molecule. Isn't that awesome? So lots of, I mean, that I think it's fun because we're writing about science. So I want to get it like all the facts straight and as a non-fiction song. But when you think about what your angle's going to be, that's where you can throw in some real imagination and make it fanciful and fun. End of sentence.
Mark,
Yeah.
you look like you're. Let me say something, then you'll think of it.
Okay.
But now you have to talk twice though. After
Okay.
So the weirdest part, I was just thinking because I couldn't remember because a lot of my songs are weird. On my physics love song album, one of the songs is about, there's a famous physics demo. It's called The Monkey and the Hunter. And that's where you aim some sort of a gun that shoots a projectile, like a ball bearing, at an object that's held up from across the room, that's held up by a magnet a certain distance above the ground. You have them connected so that when you pull the trigger, the projectile starts to go toward as the object drops. So it turns out gravity makes see, I'm a chemist, so I'm gonna have trouble with it. Gravity makes a parabolic curve. You got it. And if it falls at the same time that this other object falls, and so it ends up striking it right before it hits the ground. So it's this beautiful combination of things. So my angle was, I thought of maybe there's a guy in a circus who is the cannonball guy. It's a human cannonball. And maybe there's a trapeze artist, a girl, a ballerina or something that's in the air. And so he decides he's in love with her and he wants to meet her. And this actually works. You have to hear the song. But so the cannon shoots and it's all set up and he takes off, starts to make this parabolic curve across the circus ring, just as she lets go of her, of the trapeze. And so she starts falling at the same time anyway. He gets over there, hits the ground, and she falls into his arms. It's a love story. And it's really, to take a gamble like this, and this is pretty weird to do this. Again, it requires, you have to take a risk. And so one of the things, think about doing a math song in a musical theater setting, and think about like Marc, or think about like Monty, when he's singing in front of children. I used to do storytelling and things in front of children. That's an incredible risk to take because you're really putting yourself out there. But I think you have to do that. Monty talked about angle, and I think you also have to take a risk in order to maybe get these really precious things, these songs that really work. That's it. Yeah. What about it, Marc?
Oh man, I'm not coming up with anything specifically weird, but I can play off of what Monty was talking about contextualizing the song, and I'll just tell this whole story because it's interesting in two parts. Years and years ago, I wrote a song about derivatives of the arcsine, arcsecant, and arctangent. Wow. It was all combined into one song, and it was really not good or memorable. And it just like hung around, and I never recorded it because it really wasn't very good. And then a couple of years later, I came back to it and broke it apart and wrote each song as separate parts. So one song about derivative of arcsine, one song about derivative of arcsecant, one song about derivative of arctangent. And the first part of the story is just about how how much better it worked to decouple those things apart because we were able to focus on each thing. The contextualization that came out of the derivative of arcsine was all about love and how if you look at the graph of derivative of arcsine, it starts really, really high up and comes down to there and then goes back up. And so it kind of became this idea that when you truly love someone, you are infatuated extremely, and then as time goes on, it kind of fades a little bit. It never goes away. It comes down to this portion. You live with the person a long time, and then as the years go on, you find that you really do love this person more and more and more. And it's such a beautiful context for that concept, which is really extremely abstract in any other physical thing you were gonna necessarily try to talk about. So that's my very roundabout answer.
Mark, that's great. That I could almost feel myself tearing up just hearing you explain it.
I did tear up.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to. You're writing a song, and the advantage of writing a song is that songs convey emotion well, and if you're not tapping into that, then you're not writing the best song you could about whatever topic it is.
And
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think that was adequately weird. In addition to being moving.
Weirdly moving.
Okay. I don't want to dominate. I was wondering, so many of the attendees today, we are not necessarily as experienced or polished songwriters as you all are, but we write song parodies as sort of a quick and easy way to get in some science content. Now, you've probably all at least kind of dabbled in this. I know Marc did a lot of parodies for Calculus the Musical. Monty and Mike, I'm not aware of parodies in particular that you've done. You may have tried it at some point. Can you maybe all talk about, why you do or do not use parodies? Because this is another way of hooking people, right? It's a tune they already know, they already like, so just add content. And yet, most of your recent songs are not parodies.
Do you want me to start this one?
Go for it.
All of those things, because writing a song that's going to be catchy is certainly not the easiest thing in the world, and having that buy-in, especially with your students with a parody song, is just great, because once they recognize the tune, they'll at least smile, or at least be having a good time. Once and when I was in the classroom, that worked really well, and I was perfectly happy with it. Once we started mobilizing and doing theater and touring and trying to and publishing music, it became this, even though parodies in the way that we're using them are protected under fair use, it doesn't mean that someone can it doesn't mean that someone who owns the property rights can't write you a cease and desist letter. And you are legally within your rights, but you may have to then go to court to protect those rights. And that's really not what we're interested in spending time doing. And so trying to create that original content, it's also much more gratifying to create original content, I think. Though it is definitely much harder to push. It's definitely much harder to push, but being able to have a show out there with all original content that you never have to worry anybody knocking at your door and saying, please stop doing this now. That's a big part for me.
Yeah. So I came to science songwriting as a songwriter. I was already writing original songs, so it hadn't occurred to me to write parodies. And honestly, I put more value on an original melody because I'm a songwriter. That's what I do. But the more I see it, like especially this conference and things like this, where I see the value of grabbing a student's attention by something familiar, like it's if you're trying to put this complicated teaching content into a song, I can really see the value of having the melody be familiar, because then the listener's brain doesn't have to work so hard to take in everything. Like, okay, the melody I know, I can focus on the words. Also, it's a familiar hook. So yeah, like Marc said. So having said all that, I'm not ruling out ever writing a parody. I haven't done it yet. I'd also like to say that I think a really good parody is very difficult to write, at least for me. Like I only know one person who's famous at writing parodies, and I think you probably all know who I'm talking about.
Weird Al.
Yes. Weird Al, he's the master, and he's very good at it. But it's really not that easy to rewrite the lyrics of a melody and have the words still fit with the melody really well, and say a new thing that you want it to say, and say it really well. I find it easier to write lyrics first and then write some original melody to match those. So that would make parody a challenge for me. I think doing a really good parody it's not easy. So I don't want to trivialize that at all, but I just haven't done it.
So once again, I want to say that I'm inspired by both Marc and Monty again, because they're both right. I mean, that's 100%. I agree 100%. First of all, legally speaking, it's not as easy to truly identify a parody, or to have a parody. And you really can get into trouble. And besides, and you have to worry all the time. And so I agree with Marc. And I also agree with Monty. It's really hard to write. Most people write really bad parodies. And then that ends up being distracting. And it's not really that. I mean, I guess I've heard some people talk that they go and they write the song, they take old songs, melodies, like back, before the 20s that are free and that sort of thing. I suppose you could do that if you really, want to, but I think everybody should try to write original. And like Marc said, it really feels special. I mean, and Monty said he always started that way, writing it. So I think all of us are going to encourage people to try writing original things, and it really fits if you said you write the lyrics first, I think.
Yes.
So boy, then the music is definitely going to fit. You don't have to have some lyrics that you're trying to get. Oh no, I get a melody to fit that. So that's a really cool way to go about it.
What's next, Greg?
Let's see. My big bag of questions here. Oh, I like this one. And this is something that like Monty and I could spend an hour talking about and did once. But we'll give all three of you a shot at it today. Using jargon in songs, a headache, a fun challenge, or both? Discuss.
All right, jargon in songs. Absolutely not a headache. That's one of the reasons I love to write about science. I get to use these big, fun, goofy sounding, interesting words. And I also think that kids are not afraid of a new word. The trick is just to use them well within the context of the song. So if your understanding of the entire song hinges on already knowing a vocabulary word, then you're going to lose your listeners. So I either make that vocabulary word like the main focus of the song, it's in the chorus, we repeat it a lot, and all the rest of the song explains what that word means. Or if it's detail, the main thread of the song is very clear, and the details are used in a context, those words are used in a context where you don't have to understand exactly what they mean, but you get the gist, and it doesn't throw you off. So just being really careful about that. And like I said, I write words first, so if there's a really difficult word, like a 12-syllable word in there or something, I will put that in a place in the song where it's going to fit really well, and then write a melody that fits that word. There was one song I wrote called Wind Energy, where I did all my brainstorming. I had all the words, all the concepts in front of me about how turbines work to turn wind into electricity. And I was really struggling. Like, there were no good rhymes I could come up with that felt relevant. There was nothing. So I just ended up writing out exactly what I wanted. This leads to this, leads to this. I just wrote out this big long sentence. And then my song was the first part of the sentence. Then I repeat that and add the second part. Repeat those two and add the third part. Repeat those two. So I'm getting the repetition in that way. But if you look at the whole song, the whole last verses, the whole thing, there's no rhyme, there's no repetition. I structured it that way just to fit in the words I wanted to use. And I think worked out really well. So there's lots of ways to handle big words in a song like that. And I think that's really what makes writing songs about science fun. So to me, not a headache at all.
I'm gonna agree with Monty that it's not a headache. I think it's important to never underestimate the intelligence of your audience, because you're going to end up with something that is usually less exciting, and you run the risk of making them feel like you're talking down to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing that it really makes me think of about jargon is, I think of songs, just popular songs that were very catchy that I listened to, I got in my head, and they may have had like some word that I had no idea about. And I think there's a power to, if you write something that's catchy enough, you get people to, if you get people to learn it enough that it's in their head, then they will go and seek out what the definition of a word that they don't know is, so they can know what this thing that's in their head means. I'm going to keep trying to think of a good example of this. So come back to me in a bit.
Okay, can I answer the question with a song?
As long as it's jargon heavy.
It is. Here it comes. It goes, we're talking life. That's what bio means. It's more than catching bugs or planting little beans. There's so many things that have to do with life and you and me. That's the magic and the wonder in biology. Bioastronautics is biology in space. Biorhythms have to do with body functions and their pace. A biocide is something you should not dump in a river. Bioethics is all about who should get a liver. Bioluminescence is how fireflies can glow. A biocatalyst can make a bioprocess really go. A biome's a community with certain plants and critters. A biocrat fights for forests and never is a quitter. I'm talking that. That's what bio means. It's more than catching bugs or planting little beans. There's so many things that have to do with life and you and me. That's the magic and the wonder in biology. A biotron's a chamber where you control the weather. Bionics is the study of the structure of a feather. Bioelectrogenesis is how electric eels give shocks. BioClean means there's nothing living in your socks. Biochemistry studies how biomolecules behave. Biospeleology has to do with life in caves. Biophotolysis splits water with the sun. Biostereometrics is the three-dimensional measurements of the body utilizing two stereo cameras to make bodygrams used in medical diagnosis and anthropological research. Now I'm done. I'm talking life. That's what bio means. It's more than catching bugs or planting little beans. There's so many things that have to do with life and you and me. It's the magic and the wonder in biology. Go ahead. There's some jargon. Some
That
jargon.
cracked me up. That would crack me up.
Very nice. Very nice.
Do you think that the bio might mean life?
Life, amen.
Prefix
Could be.
somehow.
Do you ever get that, Mike, at the end of your song? The student says, so this prefix bio now,
What does that mean?
exactly are you saying?
Can I tell a quick story about some jargon in a song? I thought this kind of this is really cool because I interviewed a scientist about his research, Dr. Walter Hoff here at OSU, and he's studies how microbes can sense light, how they see in order to move toward or away from light, and so they have particular types of molecules that react to light in a certain way. So I came up with the phrase molecular eye. It's a molecular eye. He said, yeah, that's accurate. You could use that. And so, and then in the song it goes, let's see. I admit I am proud when I sense that it's cloudy. Using photocyclic chromophores. When my fine protein eye, it is hardly surprising. I've survived where others died before. But the phrase photocyclic chromophores, it turns out I invented that when he saw the lyrics again. He goes, we don't actually call them that, but you know what? That's a really good name for them. And so now he's maybe using that phrase. But I felt like it was in an all right spot in the song. This is just the thing that we use to see this is what we call it. It's like you don't have to know the word ahead of time, but you can learn the word from the song. So anyway, I thought that was fun that he said, we don't actually use that phrase, but go ahead and keep it in there because it's good.
Yeah, that's a great story. I think you deserve acknowledgement on their next paper that uses that phrase.
That's right. I'm a co-author of the paper now.
So I want to make sure we have some time for music in the context of theater and shows. So Marc clearly has experience in this area. Mike has done science shows that include music, but also magic and other things. Monty has at least talked about improv training to help his kind of stage persona and doing what he does on stage be more than singing and playing guitar. So I'm especially interested in this because songs, as you know, are so compact with their words. I feel like there's a lot of potential for theater to provide context. So the lyrics are more useful, more inspiring, more everything. For example, in Marc's math theater show, Carry Me Away, that was very moving to me. I just saw it the other weekend. Marie Curie from Poland, she discovers a new element. I'm tearing up now just as I say, and she names it polonium in honor of her native land, for which she continues to have very strong feelings despite being kind of essentially exiled to France. So okay, I'm I can't go. You guys have to take over. But you talk about potential uses and I guess feasibility of putting on science-themed musicals.
Regardless of the content, although you absolutely need content, if you're going to have a show, it needs to either be interesting or funny, but preferably interesting. Because if you don't have that part, you're not doing anything for the people who are coming. I don't think it's as hard. I don't think it's quite as daunting. Now that we've done it a couple times, I don't think it's quite as daunting a task as it might be. Calculus, I'm going to talk more about calculus than Curie because I was much more in the writing of calculus than of Curie. but wrote calculus. We wrote the script to calculus probably 2 or 3 times. And basically we had written, or I had written all of the songs for Calculus the Musical a couple years prior, not expecting to do a musical with it. And just to initially get the ball rolling, we basically went for an Anything Goes by Cole Porter, if you guys are familiar with that. But Anything Goes by Cole Porter really is not a terribly coherent story. It's things that happen in between really fun songs that justify those songs happening. And that's a perfectly good start to getting a musical off the ground, if you've got the songs. You just need to provide the framework, because if really your talents lie in songwriting, people are fairly happy to go to a musical review, but if you can contextualize it, they'll remember it more, and they'll probably enjoy it a little bit more, and it's more marketable for some reason. If you can then focus your intent, and write songs that all go to one specific aim, you've got more coherence. And of course, if you can properly, Carry Me Away is really great in the sense that it was written as a integrated piece of music and theater. So there was the story, and we knew what songs needed to be written to fulfill what spaces. But because we weren't constrained to parody, you can write those songs and you can make them work. Let's see. Someone else take over. I've lost my thread.
Well, I found it really difficult to market the science CD that I made. Each song is based on an interview with a scientist about their work, and each song tells a little story, but there's larger context. I mean, you can't get everything into a song. So they stand on their own, I think, but I think they would also benefit from a larger context. I know you were talking about how songs in musical theater perform a function within a larger story. That seems like maybe just a really great way to present science in songs, because you can tell that larger story. And then, I mean, a song should focus on one thing. You're trying to tell the entire story of whatever, somebody's research in one song. That's really hard to do. But if you could split it out and tell the story of their life and how they get interested in the topic, that's a song. And then what was their first breakthrough in studying it, that's a song. And or even smaller bits, every little thing could become a song. And then you're really telling the story in a compelling way and using music to its best effect to tell it. I think it's an awesome idea. I would love to write songs for a musical. I just haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, so I can't really talk about the process too much, but sounds awesome.
Here's a interesting thought. So, as teachers, when we plan our classroom lessons, we often think about them having a beginning, middle, and an end. Almost, if we could think about a classroom experience is almost like, and it is very dramatic at times, but if we could think about it that way, a song you could, when you write a song, it could be like a song in musical theater popping up in your lesson, that sort of thing. In fact, that kind of a model for planning a lesson could be really useful. I don't want to say you do it all the time, but starting out, your classroom, just with something as dramatic as the way Marc started, that would take a lot of guts, but you could really capture the class's imagination, and then continue from there. So I think it's applicable. I mean, I think you can really apply these ideas, like you know, like I said before, I think, you know, musical theater songs are just have generally more lyrical integrity to them, and they're generally wittier, you know, and more engaging. And just think that way. If they were writing that kind of a song, I think it could make it a richer, you know, song.
I mean, Greg mentioned Hamilton in the somewhere in the description of this session, and I mean, if you can make a successful musical theater out of a history lesson, you know, why not out of a science lesson?
Yeah.
Same idea.
Coming back around to what you guys were talking about, with the Euler song that I did at the beginning, we were talking about how that song had the attachment of a character to it, and how singing the song as a person kind of just gives you a little bit of basic emotion built into the performance. And so contextualizing contextualizing the songs in a performance where you have different characters adds memorability to your songs, because you're getting that extra, you know, it's not just a song that someone's saying, it's a song that this character in the show sings as a reaction to this. And that in itself, that adds that little extra memorable quality to it.
Great. Hey guys, I've lost control of my keyboard, so I'm going to restart my computer. Keep talking, and we have a question from an audience member. Marc and Monty, do you sell recordings of your music? If so, how successful are your sales? Do you sell after performing? What about selling songs with a book accompanying them or a slideshow? So a lot of sub questions there, but feel free to work on that while I restart my computer.
Do you want to take it, or do you want me to?
Okay.
And Mike can answer this too, because
well, let me start. Okay, because I have sold songs, but it was mostly my first initial sales were because there was a small publishing company that takes teachers' materials, you know, accepted it. And so this was back when cassettes, this thing, this plastic box or something that has movable, you know, tape in it. Anyway,
around children.
Right. I did sell, you know, I did sell quite a few of those. And later on, if I go, you know, you find if you go to a conference sometimes and you give a presentation, you have things with you to sell, you know, and then you can do it that way. But really, I think it's very difficult to break into. This has to be sort of a response to a passion that you have, rather than to make a living. Not that you can't, you know, but I think that's it, the passion element of it. Then it's not really a matter of selling anything. It's just a matter of doing what you need to do.
When I started doing children's music, I was able to sort of depend on sales to pay for the production of a CD. So I could make a CD, spend some money, make the CD, earn the money back, selling copies at shows, and maybe even make a little bit. This is a small portion of my income. But in recent years, say the last decade or so, that's no longer true. And when I made my science CD, I crowdfunded that. I did a Kickstarter campaign and raised the money up front because I knew I wouldn't make the money back to make that CD. So a large portion of the CDs went out to my funders right away, and then I have a bunch still left over that I haven't sold yet, and that was 2010 when I made this CD. So that tells you how fast the sales are going. Not very. I'm not a brilliant marketing person, so I have like, it's really hard for me to toot my own horn and get out there and try to sell something that's not in my nature too much. So when I have it at a show and I say, and my CDs are available, that's about the extent of what I do to try to sell it. Selling it with a book would be cool. I had a friend, I have a children's music friend who self-published a book, picture book, to sell it at shows, and now he's kind of regretting it because it took a lot of time, effort, and money to produce. And again, on the sales end, it's really hard. It's not easy to sell something on your own. What do you think, Mark?
I agree. I will say we do have CDs, and they have a little book inside.
See, Mark's on the ball there.
This is me doing my marketing. But we also have other CDs. This one is about logarithms. It's also got a little book inside. And they are available at Matheatre.com. And I run all of my music sales through ICanHasMath.bandcamp.com, which I can type in the chat in a moment. But I do very little to actually promote, and the only reason why we have reasonably consistent sales, and by consistent I mean we sell like sometimes one a week online, which is actually, I feel like,
it's pretty good.
It's going to build up over time.
And at certain times of year we get little bumps, but the only reason we do so well is, thank you for that, Greg. The only reason we do so well is because we have a touring musical, and I can see where people are buying CDs, and it is usually where our show is touring to. We do sell CDs at the show as well, and a lot of times people don't buy CDs at the show, they'll buy them online, or a lot of times people don't actually want a physical thing, they just want to buy tracks from Bandcamp, which is a platform I've been fairly happy with.
My songs are on Bandcamp as well. I recommend Bandcamp. It's pretty easy to work with, and just put your songs up there, and if they sell, you get some money. So
yeah, I wanna just add. I think you have to be careful. One thing, when I first started, there's a tendency to want to say have 1,000 CDs produced, and because I get rid of those in a week or two, and in reality. You will end up having a large stack of CDs or albums like I have from the 70s, from when I was a singer-songwriter, which are okay. You know, like you can actually take vinyl and melt it in the oven and make an ashtray out of it. I mean, I feel bad that would happen to that, but the idea is that it's always best, you know, to do a little mock-up of and make a few copies, and sell those, or see how that flies before you make the next step. And you need to be careful before you make a large investment, because you know, it can mount up.
We
in the corner.
We've every album we've made, we've produced in a quantity of 1,000, because the initial jump to like the initial jump to 500 is maybe, I don't know, let's say is like $1,800, and then making 1,000 is $2,000.
Right.
right.
So that bump from 500 to 1,000 has always been so much smaller than any of the other costs involved that we've always gone for.
Well, let me just jump in. What I mean though is, I mean make a copy on your computer. I don't mean have a company make 20 of them. I mean make a copy on your computer, make a mock-up cover and everything else, and just, you know, just kind of go out with that. So maybe $2 or $3, something like that. So no, I agree with you 100%. If you're going to make that step, then you do need to have a larger quantity. It's going to pay off.
You need to have space in your garage.
Correct. It's true. It's so true. So maybe we're on our own. I don't know. Are we on our own here?
Oh, Greg's back.
Oh, here's
There's
back.
Greg. Good timing, Greg. We need a question.
Well, so I guess one of the themes that I'm hearing from this conference as a whole is, you know, there's so much energy, so much creativity that people are bringing to this passion of writing music inspired by or about science. But there's the money thing is always screwing things up, right? Like nobody has any money to get things professionally made, or occasionally you do, but then you know, your luck runs out or something. So Mike, you know, never quit his day job, right? He taught chemistry for 30 years. He was safe. He'd do the songs on the side, and if they brought in a little income, great, but he didn't need it. Monty and Marc, I feel like, have taken bigger risks, perhaps, in terms of staking their livelihood to some extent on their music. You know, and that's hard, right? So do you have any comments on you know, kind of the whole cold, bitter realities of trying to make this work as a music professional?
The realities are cold and bitter.
And we'll end it there. Thank you very much. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Marc.
Oh, okay. The realities are everything for calculus was written while I was still working at a school. But then to actually launch the new career, my business partner and I quit our jobs. We stopped paying rent. Like we went on tour. We left our homes to go out and tour and live as cheaply as possible so we could get our foot in the door. And the songwriting alone, like selling CDs, doing anything online, we would not have been able to make ends meet. The only way that we were able to make a sustainable living in that way was performing. And with our show, we actually found enough demand with calculus that we could make it work. And then touring became a really bad way to live. And so we licensed our show and kind of went off and did some things for a while. The way that our business is now set up, Sadie and Ricky are now our touring company. I have a job in IT, so I can pay for having a baby. And she's like 4 now, but you know, there are still considerations. And that's really the thing. I'm now business managing, so I'm doing even less artistic work than I wanted, but I'm making sure that the art is getting out there for our team. Sadie and Ricky are on the road. They're making a living entirely on STEM performance, and they're making, if we're lucky, they'll each make almost 20K this year. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely not, there's no glory here for many years to come. And it's something where you have to keep at it, because each year you go out and do performing, and you do a good job and people like you and want you to get back, you can expand the number of places that want you. We've also found the only way for us to, not the only way for us to make money, but the way for us to make a safe living is we tour to schools and we tour to fringe festivals, because both of those things have a built-in audience, and we're relatively assured that we're going to spend our time and energy having money come out of that. We've certainly done other shows in our career where, you know, you book a theater and you hope that people come, and it's very unpredictable. The reason why doing that is a good idea sometimes is, for example, when we were just getting started, we made some friends who lived in Toronto, who had a theater in their loft apartment, and so we did a show. You know, we did a show in their loft apartment, and we had, you know, maybe 5 people show up to it who are all math teachers in the Toronto area, and, you know, we made maybe, you know, $50 from it or something like that. But what we got out of that was the buzz. So the next time we came through Canada, we got school bookings, and school bookings pay very well. So, but that's the only way that we know how to make money these days. When we started, there was no such thing as Patreon. And the other way that I would imagine a way of making money is to start a Patreon. And if you guys are familiar, are you guys familiar with Saturday morning breakfast cereal? If you are, you should check it out. It's a web comic, and the thing that inspires me so much about it is the guy who writes it updates the web comic every single day. And that's the kind of output that I can't even imagine. But if you were getting serious about STEM songwriting, that's it. Yeah. If you were serious about STEM songwriting and you set up a Patreon and you put out a song every single day, or even for a song, you know, once a week, to get people checking back over and over and never missing a week, after, I would say you need to put like 2 to 3 years into that, and then you start having a revenue stream that would be something. But I can only speculate.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing maybe there's some parallels with the music industry in general, which, as I understand it, songwriters don't make money off of selling their albums. Even if they're fairly popular, they make most of their money through kind of relentless touring.
Yes.
Yeah, can I jump in here? And what I think what these guys are talking about, there's different levels of entertainment. And one level of entertainment is the top entertainment, but there's just hundreds and hundreds of people in the summertime, the balloon makers, the people that do, you know, that do shows for fairs and things like that, and storytellers that work for libraries. And there's a massive group of people that make between $20,000 and maybe $50,000 dollars, and they have to struggle to find healthcare, and they have to join groups to so forth. That's kind of what they're talking about. And I also did shows for 10 years, and I met all those people. But you know, like, so what I'm hearing is that this is a group of folks, and I guess I'm included too, that produce things that people in the classroom could definitely use. They could have their school have the group come. They could buy things for their classroom. They could go take their class to a show. So we are kind of, in a way, we're sort of the producers of some educational STEM material. And I also think there's a part of the audience, now you can correct me, Greg, that they want to become a producer like that, either for their class. They want to write songs. They want to make science plays, or they want to do that. And so I think we're kind of a unique group in showing maybe how that can be done, but we're also cautioning you shouldn't quit teaching because it's possibly not it's not going to satisfy either your passion to produce this music or make a living.
I'd like to echo that. Don't quit your day job. I've been lucky enough to make my living at music since about 1993. And a lot of my income depended on performing in the schools in Oklahoma. And then last year, or about a year and a half ago, we had a budget crunch in the state, and suddenly the schools were broke. I lost a whole bunch of work that I was promised that didn't come through. And now I'm teaching college algebra as an adjunct to try to get through the year. I don't know what I'm going to do after Christmas. So it's somehow I've made it this far. Somehow I'll keep making it. But it is not easy. And it's not easy to live with the day-to-day stress of not knowing where your next paycheck's coming from. So unless your music is already sustaining you, don't quit your day job. Keep that steady source of income.
Yeah, I have to say, Monty's story, not to get overly personal here, but Monty's story is pretty poignant for me because, you know, he made this album, Songs from the Science Frontier, that really reflects how scientists actually do science. They think about the questions. It's not just lists of facts. It's really capturing the process and nature of science. I was a huge fan of this album. I love it. I tried to tell everyone to buy it. And, you know, he sold some copies, but, you know, not enough to finance his next album. So, it kind of breaks my heart in a way. And, you know, Monty's still here with us. He's persevering. So good for him. But it's, yeah, I guess I keep returning to that cold, harsh reality.
You're doing a lot, Greg. You're doing a lot for this. Keeping all of this in front. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, I so appreciate this conference because, you know, if there's going to be a market for this type of music, we have to build it. And this is a great first step. And kudos to Greg for thinking of this and putting it together. And hopefully this will plant a seed that'll keep growing.
I sure hope so, guys. We have 1 minute left. Any quick concluding thoughts?
I wanted to follow up with the Monty's comments. Something that I found when I went out to play math music as like math rock was that online the music is relatively popular, but if you do a gig in a particular show, you're only getting your fans from that area. And if you've got 800 fans spread across the entire United States, you've got maybe 10 in your city and 3 who can show up. And that reality makes performing much more difficult. Sorry, that wasn't a very good.
You got to build a mailing list.
Yeah, you do have to build a mailing list.
Well, that's where you talked about the solution to that is performing at schools. You have that built-in audience, and the school will pay you. Right? That's what you tell them your fee, and they'll agree to pay it ahead of time, and you don't have to worry about whether the audience will show up there and you get paid. So as long as the school systems are healthy and well-funded and excited about bringing extras in for their kids in the arts, things to supplement the arts, then we're golden. But we're not living in that age right now.
And sponsors have to believe in you. That's because a lot of schools get their money from sponsors. So it has to get out there enough so that companies and organizations are going to want to support the STEM education in the area of music.
Yeah, it feels like it's a full-time job to create the songs and create the art. And it's also a full-time job to get the gigs. So it's 2 full-time jobs for one person. It's hard to do.
Am I still on?
You are still on.
Okay. My computer has frozen, so anyway, I believe that is the time that is available to us. So everybody please physically or mentally thank our panelists in whatever form of applause you can muster through this weird interface. And we will get set up for our next panel, which is also about songwriting, but more from the perspective of promoting student songwriting and helping students be songwriters. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much to Marc, Mike, and Monty for this wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.